Yeah, cool. We're like, how many people are we now? Like 15 or so. So thanks, Albert. We just kick it off so people don't get bored. So thanks all for joining. This is the 32nd Bitcoin Design Community Call. We're at Bitcoin.design, an open space, an open community for anybody who's interested in the combination of Bitcoin and design. It's a space of about 3,000 people on our Slack, and lots of people are collaborating on all kinds of different projects. We have a design guide that we're working on, where we gather it's like a human interface guidelines for Bitcoin and Lightning applications. But then people are all working on all kinds of other things. We have an accessibility channel, an art channel. People are working on Zeus, the wallet, or the Albi, the Lightning browser extension, all kinds of things happening in there. And today, part John's and Ed, longtime members of the design community, and will give us an update on the second iteration of the Bolt Fun Shock the Web hackathon. Apparently, the most electrifying. So they organized a first hackathon a few months ago, and this will be the second one. I'm going to stop because I'll butcher it, and I'll just leave it up to John's and Ed to do their thing and let us know what's going on.
Yeah, sure. Thanks for that, Christoph. Yeah, so when was it? I think last month. We still in May. Sorry, March. We had our first hackathon, which is a quarterly hackathon focusing on building Lightning applications in the web. And yeah, it went pretty good. We had about 13 projects submitted, a few, like about 150 people who registered to hack. It was quite eventful. A lot of noise in the in the Slack channels, which is kind of like one of the reasons we wanted to do it as well, to bring up engagement, and also kind of like be a ground for designers and developers to start collaborating and working together. And why that's important is because, you know, um, there's a lot of work being done on wallet designs and like the full set of functionality. But designing a wallet is a pretty big undertaking, or even developing one is a big undertaking. So with browser extensions and mobile apps that includes these WebLN browsers, we're able to kind of like interact with the wallet, whether it's an extension or whether it's a wallet like Breeze or Blue Wallet with its lap browser, um, and a few others. Blix as well also has a WebLN browser in it. The designer and developer don't need to focus on the wallet part, which is typically catering for the send and receive actions, right? We could start exploring like different kind of use cases for the for Bitcoin. So yeah, that's a little short intro. Maybe Ed wants to mention something.
Hey, yeah, absolutely. So as John's mentioned, the Shock the Web hackathons are a chance for makers to learn about Lightning on web, to explore and experiment with it on web, and basically build sort of Lightning-enabled web applications. So the second hackathon, Shock the Web 2, is going to be from June 16th to the 19th. So it's going to be a slightly shorter 4-day format, as opposed to Shock the Web 1, which was a week long. And it's going to involve a lot more sort of conference style talks, workshops, and hopefully a panel discussion on kind of day one, just to sort of onboard people, get some education and some inspiration flowing into the weekend. And then it's going to be 3 straight days of hacking it out, and some final presentations on the Sunday, along with hopefully some pretty awesome prizes. So we'd love to see you all there. We have a bunch of resources available. So if you're new to Lightning on Web, if this is your first Lightning web application that you're building, or if you have some experience and you just want to learn a bit more, we do have quite a few resources that were taken from the first hackathon. So you can go over to our YouTube channel or Bitcoin TV, and you can check out some of those resources. For example, you can learn how to build backend with Galloy or LN Bits. Christoph did a really awesome talk on how to use the Bitcoin Design Guide and Wallet UI Kit, for example. So loads of really cool stuff. And yeah, really the point of them is just to have fun and to explore some of these kind of cutting edge use cases with Lightning over the web. So yeah, we hope to see a bunch of you guys there, June 16th to the 19th. Yeah, thanks again to you guys, the Bitcoin design community. We won't be here without you. So big shout out to you guys as well, and a lot of the work that and space that you facilitated from the first one. So yeah, we really appreciate it.
Yeah, awesome. I think there was definitely a big spike in activity during the last hackathon. I think one of the biggest takeaway that I had from the hackathon was just that how simple it's become to build a web app on using Lightning in the browser. And it's not that all the problems are solved. There are still a whole bunch of friction points, and there are more libraries to build and tools to build. But it's pretty amazing how accessible this has become for a web developer to just within a few days, just get into it. And then imagine, a team spending more time and building out more products. And that will probably mature a lot more over the next months and year or so. So I think we'll see some really cool stuff happen there. So with the first hackathon, there were presentations from different people about different aspects of Lightning. Are you thinking of building on top of that in a specific direction? Do you have any specific types of projects that you'd like to see or that you'd like to encourage? And how do you see the balance between design projects and projects that code things, or the combination of those?
Yeah, I think to give a quick answer to that, I think we'd like to see a mixture. We are obviously designers, so we would love to see some beautiful UI and UX, whether that's the actual application itself or potentially coming up maybe with some new patterns or exploring commonly used UX patterns that are sort of taken from maybe more traditional kind of Web 2 applications, or maybe even sort of outside of the Bitcoin ecosystem, and then bringing them in and seeing how they can maybe be reworked and refitted with Lightning. In terms of projects, we'd love to see some of the projects kick off or pick up, sorry, from where they left off last time. I think one of the common things with hackathons, right, is that people come along, they work on really cool stuff for a week or a few days or a couple of days, and then a lot of the time, a lot of these projects become sort of stagnant. It's quite rare that they then actually sort of mature into full-scale projects or products. We know that they have before. I think, for example, Albi came out of a hackathon, and loads of other cool projects I'm sure have. But actually, yeah, we would like to encourage people to come and sort of pick up from where they left off. Why not continue to build on what you've already built, integrating new features, maybe upgrading UI or UX patterns. So yeah, I'm not sure if John has anything more to say to that, but yes, I think is the question that we would like to kind of have a focus on both development and design.
Yeah, and for the types of projects, there's a lot of excitement around this value for value kind of I don't know if it's a movement, let's say. Now it becomes interesting when you start to think of okay, I can really start playing, I'm developing a product, I can really start playing with the payment flows now, where it's not only that the person on one side of the computer has to put money in, but they can actually start receiving money for like different actions and stuff. And then you have to think about like what are the incentives for that. There's obviously like some security model stuff that you have to figure out, which is like people from gaming these systems and stuff. Um, and there's quite a few libraries that are coming out as well. There's this Noster, which is kind of like this like messaging relay system. It's still in the infancy. It's still being developed and stuff, but we hopefully by the end of the year when we have like the the fourth Shock the Web hackathon, some of these systems are a bit more mature and people kind of like understand how to piece these pieces of technology together. And I think that's when it starts to get like really, really interesting, when we start like connecting these like little bits of protocols and stuff and specifications that have been building up over the years, and we start to do some like really cool things with it. But here's the thing, right? Like going back a little bit, why we started fun stuff in the Bitcoin. So yeah, like Bolt Fun was kind of spawned out of the Bitcoin design community as one of these like sub communities, right? We gave up like Christoph and I, and we gave a talk at FOSDEM talking about like these sub communities within Bitcoin, such as Albi, Zeus, and the other ones that were mentioned. And Bolt Fun is definitely one of those. And how it started is like through the writing of the guide and the payments chapter. Myself and with the help of Arvinda, we were kind of like documenting some of the more technical things that we were researching that may not necessarily go into the guide. Things around the Lightning Network, HODL invoices, all that. At the time, it just wasn't ready for that first version, and the writing was kind of like enough for a slightly technical designer to kind of like get a grasp of. But then we realized this content is actually great for those people who kind of like are hybrid, and we kind of like call them like makers. But a maker could also be a designer who partners up with another developer. So I don't want to like you're still a maker if you're designing stuff as well. You don't need to know how to develop. But anyway, so this content started to form, and it was at this it wasn't too technical, but it wasn't like non-technical for designers, and this kind of like creates a situation where the designer is exposed to a bit more of the capabilities of the specifications and the constraints of the protocol and of the specs. And I think once designers like start to understand those capabilities, constraints, and specifications a bit more, then they could actually be really creative in solving like practical problems. And that's what we're hoping to see like more of. And me personally, I want to see more of these things, like subscriptions being handled, or batching, batching, or authentication using these Lightning specifications and protocols and stuff, or even things like opening and closing channel. What's like the best user experience for that, of connecting to an LSP? In the web, you're able to like very quickly and rapidly prototype these things using like web APIs. And yeah, so that's kind of like the area where we want to get to. You could solve like these small design problems or smaller design problems versus trying to take on a whole wallet design.
Yeah, makes a ton of sense. I wanted to dig into that a little bit, get kind of hands-on practical. So from my understanding, it's like the two main things that you can do when a wallet is connected to a website is you can authenticate. So you don't need a username or an email and a password anymore. The website sends like a short piece of information to the wallet. The wallet signs it, sends it back, and then the wallet can recognize like, okay, here the website can recognize, okay, this is this unique wallet here, and that is basically then your authentication. So with the web, I also find it interesting that you could use a browser extension to log in, but you could also have the website on your desktop and you could scan a QR code from your phone and that would log you in. So it really separates the authentication pretty much from the device itself, and it separates it from the typical identifiers like username, password, email. And the second part is then the payment flows. So all of a sudden, with like if a user is actually set up with a Lightning wallet and has some sats, then you can ask them to make a payment that's like zero point 0.1 cents or so, and it is done within a second, and it's economically viable, right? There's very little, pretty much no fee overhead. It's negligible. And so the interesting thing is, and what you can you do with those new capabilities? I think it's kind of it is. I think a starting point is always, well, let's take a service that I already know, or that we already know and that we value, that we're used from Web 2 or 0.0 or whatever you want to call that, and let's just switch out the authentication, or let's switch out the payment rails. But I think through hackathons, by getting really hands-on and feeling this out, those are the moments then when you realize what potentially new things that can be done that you just simply couldn't do before. So I see the value in hackathons very much in that part, this free experimentation with very, very quick iteration with a bunch of people that just got together to do this same thing. Did I miss anything about describing the capabilities of what you can do in Lightning web apps?
I mean, like it's an open field. It's like it's just starting up now, so probably there's stuff missed, but that's why we're trying to like encourage this experimentation right now. One example of something that I just found like quite mind blowing recently. We did an interview with Mick and the Geyser Fund team, Geyser Fund. They're building this kind of like fundraising platform, and you create an account, you set up, you connect your node to it and stuff. It's a bit technical on that front, but anyway, you connect your node to it, and then you could start like receiving payments, like donations straight to your node, right? So Geyser doesn't actually take any of those funds, but they have this really cool thing that they did recently. They have a podcast out, and they're interviewing the participant, like some of the campaign creators, right, on the on their platform, and through the foundation, Fountain FM, I think it's called, through the Fountain app, they're using this key send method to basically direct donations that to the. Okay, so you listen to the podcast of like whichever campaign creator, and any donations whilst listening to the podcast get streamed directly to the campaign page. And I think that is like super awesome, because now you start to see like the connecting points of like multiple platforms, kind of like payments are handled on one platform, but they're kind of like being represented on another. And I think that kind of like distribution is like super, super interesting. And that's something that's like, again, like we haven't even scratched the surface on what could be possible there, right? There's a whole bunch of design patterns out there for us to discover.
Yeah, that's a really cool one. Ed, you're about to say something?
Yeah, I was just going to kind of add to that. I think, in short, I think there's just more space for imagination, or at least there seems to be a little bit more space for imagination when it comes to different applications, different use cases. As John's mentioned, like you could use that key send feature to like boost a fundraising effort through a platform. You could have some sort of scroll to pay feature on a blog or an ebook. There is obviously this whole sort of value for value economy, which I think Albie has kind of really trying to capture a lot of attention around. And like you said, there are all these kind of use cases for micro interactions and microtransactions, ways to sort of like monetize content or interactions or clicks. For example, like on the makers.boltfun platform, you can kind of upvote these products a little bit like Product Hunt or something. But you're voting with sats, right? You're kind of putting your money where your mouth is, as it were. So I think there's just loads of stuff waiting to be kind of like explored and experimented with. And like you said, like that can come in the form of WebLN, right? Like it could be in a browser extension wallet like Owlbee, or maybe, like you said, maybe someone wants to pull out their phone and scan a QR code. Obviously, that's like a slightly different user experience, but it is quite similar to a lot of user experiences that maybe, I don't know, two-factor authentication apps or scan to connect to your account, like all sorts of things like that. So yeah, I just think there's like a myriad of opportunities kind of waiting to be explored with Lightning. And yeah, that's kind of what we want to see at these hackathons at Shock the Web, is like people just exploring these things, whether it's with code or without code.
Yeah, that reminds me, after the last hackathon, after watching all the teams' presentations, it was pretty clear that the login with Lightning or login with Bitcoin, actually, I think sign in is the better term here, that is something pretty much every project has to figure out. You could also call it Connect Wallet or something else. I like sign in with Bitcoin. And so I created this issue on the Bitcoin design GitHub that says, create reference design for login with Bitcoin. Something I'm still investigating and trying to figure out. And it's pretty interesting. So because there are multiple complexities that come with it. So let's say you sign up with an email that allows a service to always be in contact with you. They can email you something, right? If you just have this signature from a wallet that may not even been on the same device that you use the website on or the service on, then you cannot really contact the user anymore. So there's kind of a disconnect, which is fine for some applications, I think, but for other applications, there has to be like a communication channel. Then another interesting one is let's say using Owlbee as a browser wallet to sign in, but handling payments with a secondary app or a secondary wallet. So you could connect multiple wallets to kind of the same account. And how you would, from a UI and UX perspective, how you would handle those two. Because at some point, you probably want to switch from one wallet to another. Let's say you stop using one app, get a new phone or something. So those are the types of UX patterns that I'm trying to think through and document. So most likely there'll be a GitHub, a Figma file, and hopefully a page in the Bitcoin design guide. And I hope it'd be awesome if somebody built a library on top of this, because I feel like that's one of the things that pretty much every project will have to deal with. And if they can just grab a library, get a nice UI, and have the login or the sign in, and maybe managing wallets handled for them, I think that a lot of teams would probably be happy, and it would speed up their development at hackathons and otherwise. So if anybody wants to work on that one, let me know.
One thing that you mentioned there is like you have an accounting system which is based on like these Bitcoin keys, and we've had discussions in the community about what is a wallet, what does a wallet do, and is it just a signing device? We spoke about this. It's like this keychain and signing device, right? And like I think the function of signing in or like this account part and the payments, they don't need to be they don't need to necessarily correspond, right? Because for the service provider or the website, they just need to know through, and maybe you might have to do a payment proof using like a pre-image or something, and a pre-image is something that you get every time you make a payment online. Every time you pay an invoice, you get this pre-image back, and this proves that you've made the payment, because there's no other way to kind of figure out if an invoice is paid. So whether you pay, like once you sign in and you pay, you make a payment from your mobile wallet or your node on Umbra, or you use a browser extension like Albi with WebLN or whatever. The service provider doesn't care about that. Just like, you could attach multiple credit cards to a Amazon account, or when you use e-commerce, you don't necessarily have to save your credit card details, right? So there's a lot of things that we could borrow from like outside, but of course we're kind of like establishing it for the first times in Bitcoin now, and it definitely needs designer attention. All these different authentication flows. How do you do recovery of your account then, right? Can someone else prove a payment with that pre-image without logging account? There's all these different like interesting flows and stuff that we could start getting into, that are kind of like talking more about the usage of Bitcoin, right? And I really believe that these things are what's going to like drive more adoption of Bitcoin, because now we have more places to use it, right? We could keep downloading wallets and designing them and stuff, and there's a lot of work still left there. I'm still waiting for the awesome wallet with contact list, with contact-based coin selection, but yeah, there's like all these other patterns that we've yet to discover. So I really hope like designers jump in, and these projects are small enough for them, and these problems are small enough that they can kind of like on during the weekend, these off flows and stuff you can start looking into and whatnot. And I think someone came up here. I don't know if they wanna have a chat. How do you do this, Christoph?
Yeah, hey, RebelBit requested to talk, and so feel free. Hey, RebelBit, what's up? Okay, maybe you have to unmute yourself if you want to say something. Feel free to unmute yourself. Let us know what's up. Otherwise, we'll keep chatting.
And like one other thing, like Christoph, we spoke so many times, in the beginning of the community and stuff like that, about like how do you make things more fun, right? Um, and yeah, I think like having like small projects that are kind of like achievable, like even this design challenge that you posted and stuff like that. If we start looking into them a bit more, I think those are the kinds of things that we could have fun on, right? Um, like especially if you could like prototype them like rather quickly without having to go through the app store and test flight and building all this. Renee from the last hackathon in the Bitcoin design community, he's working on like some glitch templates, so you could like your whole dev environment will basically be inside of the browser, so you can make a Lightning web app in the browser, and I think that's going to be fun.
Yeah. So what another aspect I'm interested in, and this is pretty much pretty detailed here, is so if you, I'm sure you are aware of Stacker News. Of course, it's based on Hacker News. It's a website where you can post links, and they're all Bitcoin links, and then you can vote on news. You can vote with your sats, so 1 Satoshi per vote, I believe. And so you have to deposit, and with your wallet, you have to deposit whatever you want into your wallet, and that will be then stored in the website. And then when you vote on some news on the website, then it's basically just gets deducted from the database, right? There's no transaction going on. So what I'm curious in is really seeing if we can push this where there's no custodial element, and if we can actually make this all of these interactions fully based on Lightning. So this is let's say you go to Stacker News website or the homepage, you want to vote on something, you expect this interaction to be basically instant and seamless with no other friction points. With Albi and allowances, we could automate pretty much the interaction flow or the payment flow. You wouldn't have to approve things anymore. But still, a few things would have to happen under the hood. The website has to reach out to the node and get an invoice. The browser has to receive the invoice, pass it on to Albi. Albi has to approve it then, confirm it, send the pre-image back. The website has to double check the pre-image, and then the website can be confident that this payment was made for this one Satoshi, and then your vote can count. So there's a lot of stuff that has to happen under the hood. I'm not sure if this is even economical or even something that we should be doing, but I think a hackathon is pretty much a right environment where you can try to stress test this type of stuff and see how you can optimize it. And you can just do some fun activities when people just have to pay 1 sat or so. Nothing gets lost, right? Nobody's putting down 10 euros or anything. It's just really small amounts, and you can be really playful with these things. So that's one of the areas where I'm kind of curious how far we can stress test this.
Yeah, I think that's a really good idea. One like we myself and Boomi were discussing like fun challenges for the hackathon, like the first one. We didn't implement this, but perhaps we should on this one. Now people understand like the basics of like how to get like how to build some of these apps. So some people understand, and we have the content there. But one of the challenges would be like create a Lightning application that produces the most amount of invoices and then incentivize people to pay those invoices somehow. And I think that itself could be a great stress test. And you mentioned that, like, should these things be done? And like, why not? Why shouldn't they be done? I mean, Bitcoin gives you the freedom, right, of your money and to do whatever you want with it. So like, if you want to make the most ridiculous application that like whether it's a whack-a-mole thing and every mole is a an invoice that you tap on, and then like I don't know, there's one like 1,000 sat giveaway or something. I'm just spitballing here, but yeah, people have the ability to make it, and I think on the design and UX side, it's when you start going into like, okay, these incentives and payment flows and the different delays that are happening, how do you deal with them for the invoice generation and whatnot? I think that gets really interesting at that point then.
Yeah, for sure. One of the things I was wondering to speed up this whole interaction process would be if a website kind of anticipates user actions. So let's say you go to Stacker News homepage, and that it would already load an invoice when you load the page in anticipation that you would vote on something. So when you press that vote button, the invoice is already available, and it just has to get it confirmed. That kind of works, but only for if there are fixed amounts. And you might potentially, if let's say 10,000 people use the website at the same time, that means you would have like 10,000 invoices floating around, and most of them will probably not be used. So you do create a ton of traffic and invoice spam, and that would also have to be somehow smoothly managed by the node itself, where I've actually no idea how well optimized these the nodes are to handle that amount. Johns, didn't you say something about trying to create the app that creates the most invoices? Have you looked into that at all? See if there are any limits or how that's handled?
Yeah, I think there's a limit of 400 and something HTLCs that could be created at a time or something like this on your node. I don't know if that's a configurable thing or if it's a LND specific thing. But there are some limits. But hey, like if we could show like practical use cases for it, like KeySend, for instance, the practical use case for that was WhatsApps, right? And then WhatsApps from there turned into like Sphinx Chat or something like this, or the other way around, can't remember. And like people saw like, hey, you could do this chat stuff with like over the Lightning Network now. Okay, using this KeySend thing, and then now it's like part of. I don't know if is it part of the spec now, but anyway, it has some level of adoption for LND nodes at least, and it's because I think and there's some interest in it with all these podcast players and stuff like that now utilizing it. it's like if we can show off use cases, and this is where design really comes in, right? Design, you're able to kind of like imagine all these different use cases um, for the tech. Then whoever's working on the protocols, whoever's developing nodes, they can start. They're essentially getting feedback on how to improve their systems or figure out like what the limitations of it are. So I think yeah, design definitely plays a big part in there, in answering some of these questions and forming discussions around possible solutions to problems that arise.
Yeah, since I see Stephen here too, I think, Stephen, you left a message on one of my PRs this week or last week about not promoting Keysend too much. Do you remember what that one was about?
Yeah, that's random. I mean, yeah, I say that frequently. I guess from the context of a daily spending wallet, I haven't really seen too much good use case for Keysend. You know, I guess the thing that bothers me the most about Keysend payments is the inability to receive, any kind of proof or verification that the payment actually made it to its sender intact. That's at least my understanding of Keysend. So somebody correct me if I'm wrong on that, but maybe it could be that for certain types of Lightning payments, that's an acceptable trade-off to have. But the not being able to get a proof of payment seems kind of bad to me.
So does it mean there's potential that the money will just get lost somewhere along the way and just you won't know and the receiver will also not know?
Well, hopefully someone who is a better Lightning engineer can, explain that more fully than I can. There's just my answer to that is I don't know. But if there is no proof of payment, then that that seems suspect to me. Like if there is no proof that the payment was received, then how can you verify whether it was actually made it there or whether it was intercepted along the way? Now, I know in the Lightning Network we've had these kinds of security issues before. One example that comes to mind would be zero amount invoices, and in the time since then, I know that a lot of the implementations have been working on fixes and patches that make zero amount invoices safe to send. But that would be an example of a situation where getting pretty close to the last hop, a payment could be swiped and retained and not make it to its intended recipient. So yeah, with Keysend, it bothers me a lot that there's that just seems like a vulnerability. And maybe for some sorts of things, if it's just a random tip, or maybe in a podcasting app or something like that. I mean, maybe Keysend is okay in these kind of situations, but I think the comments that I probably made on that PR were that I don't see it as like a prime use case for payments in the same way that you would give somebody your node ID and have them constantly send payments to it, or like I just don't see it as being a primary use case for a daily spending wallet. That's my main issue.
Got it. So contextually on that page, within that reference design, you think it's not appropriate, which makes sense. Yeah. For something like the value for value where you're streaming sats because when you're listening to a podcast or so, and those just get pushed out, that seems to make more sense.
But you raise an interesting point. I would be curious to hear from people who understand Keysend better. Like, given that there's no proof of payment, is there a risk that something could get lost along the way, or is there really no risk and it's actually pretty safe? And is the proof just more of a convenience thing? I don't know. We'll have to learn.
So one of the other things that I find interesting about Stacker News is that once a day, I think some of the sats, or maybe all of those sats that people spend on voting get redistributed to the people that that posted popular content. So I think that goes back to something John's mentioned earlier, is when you put money into systems like this, and you create these types of incentives, you have to very carefully think through them, because otherwise, anything about money, people will instantly game, and especially if it has something to do with popularity, like a news link site like Stacker News. People are anyways, will try to game this and just post stuff that basically gets tons of votes anyway. So I'm curious. I haven't really observed that very much on Stacker News, but I'm just kind of curious if how they went about modeling that, and if that would then also apply to other things that could be built on top of Lightning. So just another dimension there that I find interesting.
Yeah, these are all kind of like especially in the web stuff, I see a lot of them as like experimental because they're like so new. The things that you're like that payment flow and incentive model that you're talking about and possible vulnerabilities for Stacker News. It's like it's the first time this kind of stuff is being like is being thought about, right? We don't have other examples in the space. So like for example with Bolt Fun, what we were doing is for every project that's listed on Bolt Fund, it has like a Lightning address attached to it. Now that allows us to, when you vote, the funds go straight to the hopefully the creator of the project if the project's submitted by them, or if they're up to receive those funds. And but we need to count the vote, we need to have the pre-image. Now, if you don't use like WebLN, which deposits the pre-image back to the web page that we could then store, then we kind of like we're in the blind of whether that payment was made or not. And there's no like verification APIs on the node or whatever, or no other way to figure out if a payment, like for a third party to figure out how if a payment was made. And this is like a very interesting model, because if you look at like if you want to create like the next Spotify or Apple Music or Tidal or whatever, and the platform is there, it allows people to artists to get listed. Like every time you play, those funds go straight to the artist, and because you don't want to be a middleman, right? I think having these principles, upholding these principles in your design and product development is important, because they're in line with like what we want this new financial system to look like. But then, like, how does the operator of that service, of that directory, how do they then get monetized? How do they verify that it had 500 sats being streamed to the artist? And these are things that maybe through these experimentations and research can influence the protocol, or can influence like different APIs and different specs to come about. So I'm very pro experimentation at this phase. I'm very pro experimentation at this phase, because there's like just so much we have to like figure out how to include.
Can you explain why it's not possible to verify if an invoice was paid? Because the node obviously knows when an invoice was paid or not.
So so as a third parties, let's say like the Bolt Fund website, right? We don't have a node running. We just have this directory.
Okay. So yeah,
exactly. Yeah.
Because the payment doesn't touch you at all. It goes directly to the creator of that project.
Yeah, exactly. And now we start to get like really into like some creative fields where it's like, how do you then monetize the service, right? And I'm I hate subscriptions, so like definitely no subscriptions. But I like this like pay-per-use model instead. And I keep referencing this all the time because I just love it. Roy wrote an article from Breeze. He's like, subscriptions are like, you want a glass of milk, but you have to buy the whole cow. So, with Lightning Network, you don't have to buy the whole cow. You could just like literally pay per second or whatever. But now, how does that service get monetized? How do you incentivize the artists to now pay you back money, because you can't split a payment in this kind of way, right? You can make two separate payments that happen sequentially or like in a short space of one another, but like you can't like, because then you're custodying it and then take it and then release it, because we don't want to do custody, right? So then you start thinking like, okay, maybe what you can start to do is to figure out like some kind of model where the person gets delisted, have not done XYZ or something, and you then also have to think, how do you provide, as a service provider or a directory, how do you provide the most amount of value and eyeballs to that artist or to that maker's project, to encourage them to stay and utilize your platform. I think yeah, these kind of like models and payment flows and stuff, it's super exciting for designers to start looking into, or just product people in general.
Oof, yeah, I do hope that we come up with new models here that really work differently than some of the stuff that we have going on right now. And I think that's generally big picture. That's the exciting thing, right? Because we've had the internet now for decades. We've had mobile apps for 10 plus whatever years. Feels like, we've seen it all. We've seen consolidation of these big companies, and it's all streaming right now. There's some big providers. And we've all felt now, and we feel some of the problems. People always complain about Twitter. People always complain about ads everywhere and about data tracking. And here's another opening that we could potentially use, and that we're hopeful for, to come up with different incentive mechanisms and different interaction models and all of this stuff. Different middlemen, hopefully very few of them. And I do hope that we can get creative and come up with things that work, that are very fair and well considered, and that promote good things, and whatever that may mean. I think that's really, we have some very interesting open design space here.
What kind of apps do you want to see, Stefan and Christoph?
So as as I showed you, I'm working on a very simple web app that I'm trying to build on the side, because I learn the best by actually experimenting and doing things, and hitting my head against all of these problems. So I just want to see some really well executed, fun, playful things, because I might be a little bit critical, but I've tried various, Lightning wallets that had different apps in them, and most of them didn't barely even work. The login didn't work. The layout was broken because it wasn't made for mobile, or it just basically just didn't work. And the ones that worked were, there were good basic things to test functionality, like a simple roulette thing or so, or feeding the chicken on the, what is it, LN Pollo, I don't know, Pollo feed, whatever it's called. That's a fun thing. But I'm more curious to see now just very simple things that just make all of the user experience, and that are just so well, beautifully executed. And then once we kind of feel what this can be like, then maybe we can work towards more complex things. I would personally be more interested, not so much interested in things where it's really just, well, something we know, but instead of paying with a credit card, you pay with Lightning. That's like just swapping out the payment channel, which can be, it can make a huge difference, because it can make something available globally where otherwise it was restricted to certain countries, where the current payment methods just were allowed or within the legal possibilities or whatnot. So I think that can be powerful. But for Lightning web apps at this moment, I'm more curious to see really creative, well executed, simple, playful things and see where that takes us.
The most invoices. Steven, what about you? You got any ideas to share?
Well, I mean, all my ideas are fairly boring, I'd say. I mainly just want to see the experience around paying over Lightning perfected. Um, you know, I mean, in terms of on the website, I mean, yeah, just someone perfecting the experience of paying paying in an e-commerce store would be great. I think just submarine swaps are needed. That's another kind of I don't know, often overlooked thing. I think getting funds from Lightning, um, you know, between on-chain and Lightning in a way to where the user doesn't have to think about it is another thing that not enough wallet projects are looking at. And then probably just a really good, super privacy focused Lightning wallet would be really good. So yeah, my wish list is on the boring side.
I'm not sure if it can be considered too boring. I mean, you did win the first hackathon with Arian parking for those who are unfamiliar. So solving some parking problems in downtown Atlanta. I think I came across a application that was advertised on Twitter or something this afternoon. Actually, I think it's called Orange Pill something. It's kind of like a friend matching application for Bitcoiners. Kind of like a Tinder style, swipe to make a friend type thing. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it'd be interesting to see some sort of like Bitcoiner dating app where, I don't know, you have to use an invoice of 1 sat in order to send someone like a like or a rose or even key send for messaging or something. But I don't know. Maybe we want to stay out of the realm of dating, but I'm not sure how well Bitcoiners do that. But I can think of loads of examples as well. I mean, I would also love to see something like I don't know, something like 1Password, like a password manager application, maybe like a browser extension. We talked about the authentication use cases earlier, so that'd be interesting. I mean, also, if anyone wants to kind of like discuss these things, we are all ears, and it'd be nice to create a backlog or a backlog of Lightning web app ideas, use cases, and things like that, so people can kind of pluck them off the shelf when they start hacking at Shock the Web.
Yeah, there's a channel in the Bitcoin Design Slack called Bolt Fun. So if anyone wants to hop in there and like message me and Ed about any questions or just drop your ideas in there and run away, then that's pretty cool. That'd be good. And Ed, I think like a Bitcoiner dating app. Why not, man? Don't put Bitcoiners down like that. Bitcoiners date too.
I guess another area that I find interesting is just to think about, so payments online where they're limited because of, we have to use credit cards or PayPal or whatever is available, so there are global restrictions, but there are also minimums that we're not willing to pay. Like we're not transferring €1 or so over the web or 50 cents. It just doesn't make any sense right now. And that prevents certain economic activity from happening. It could be, I don't know, we're kind of used to websites like Fiverr or so, like somebody around the world, like, hey, please design a logo for me, and they'll get a little bit of money for it. And I'm just kind of curious if there are things, because the friction is lower, if there are these micro services that could potentially be offered by different people, if there's just a new category of things that could potentially be done, because now a 10-cent payment or 50 cents or so payment is actually economically viable and really fast. and if that allows for new types of services, people helping each other with different activities or things. If there are some areas there, I'm not sure what they would be, but maybe there's something there to explore. But that's not so much a technical issue. Maybe more of so a economic human need type of deal. Like, what are these types of services that people might need and would be willing to pay small amounts for, that could be done very quickly?
That's a super important part, because it's like you could design. I'm referencing this again, the most invoices thing. You could design something that tries to generate the most amount of invoices, but the big question is like, why is someone going to pay for it? So it's definitely like when we talk about like experimenting on use cases that can drive adoption, and experimenting rapidly prototyping in using the web to rapidly prototype them, that's the big part that we're telling you to focus on, right? It's like, focus on like what that incentive is, and the usefulness of the application. And yeah, that's very human, as you mentioned. And it could even be things like designing a button animation that when you press it, it feels delightful to do whatever. I remember there was this one app some years ago. It was called Yo, and it got like $1 million in funding, and it was just a button that says, you press it and it sends a text message saying Yo. But yeah, let's make dumb things like that, right? Why not? And see what comes of it.
Yeah. Hey, Mike. Mike just requested to speak. Now you can speak, Mike. How are you? Did you mean to tell us something here? Feel free to unmute yourself. Let us know. Because otherwise, we're nearing the hour here, and that means that we're gonna wrap up. So, Mike, this is your chance. If you'd like to let us know something.
Speak now or forever hold your peace, Mike.
Sorry,
Let's go.
guys.
Not forever. Like, we have in 3
about
weeks.
that.
We have
I'm
another.
gonna
Go ahead.
kill Steve Jobs in his grave. Phone problems. Hey, what's up? Interesting listening to all you guys. I'm not like a Lightning developer or anything like that at all. But I've been thinking about applications, and like you guys talking about micropayments and stuff, and I've been fascinated about games. And this is like a rough idea. Wanted to get your guys' take. Like, I imagine like a Flappy Bird type of game where you go head to head with somebody else, and you can like bet sats on it. So you have friends. You're like, okay, we'll wager 10 sats on this, and the person who gets like the highest score in this round, gets the sats. Or even like a tournament type of style where you could have, every kind of like blocks of blockchain of Bitcoin. Excuse me. Every 10 minutes you run like a competition, like a tournament, and everybody can participate. And, everybody puts up like 10 sats, and then, it's like a head to head. And then, the winner continues, and then, maybe you distribute the sats to the top 10 people or something like that. So, just some thought about like some type of skill-based quick game that you can compete with friends or group of friends, or like, like the whole world. So I don't know if you guys have heard of anything like that, or that sounds interesting or stupid.
Even if it sounds stupid, it's awesome. And it doesn't sound stupid. I think that would be like super cool. And maybe you should check out ZBD, ZBD, and Thunder Games. They're doing like some really awesome stuff in the gaming realm. I'm not sure how much they support like web specific stuff, but yeah, some really interesting things are happening on that side. And also, like, if you can prototype this, or find someone who can like develop, like a web developer who can like help you with it, I'm pretty sure that could be a cool hackathon project as well. Or some simplified version of it to test out the mechanics.
Right on. Yeah, I have a game that I had developed that has like the gameplay down, where it's kind of similar. It's really like reaction time. So I have something like that. It's a prototype, but nothing built out in terms of like, like connecting people or creating rooms for friends or whatever. But yeah, maybe I'll stay in touch with you and Bitcoin Design, and I can send you what I got, and you guys can let me know if there's something interesting there.
Jump into Bitcoin Design Slack, bitcoin.design, and you could just drop the idea down in the Bolt Fun channel in there, and yeah, we'd love to continue the conversation there. Christoph, I think we're on the top of the hour there.
Yeah, I was just thinking we might need a games channel. And Mike, as you were speaking, I've seen some games that implement Bitcoin, and I think what I've seen so far was pretty much, well, play the game and we'll give you some sats for playing or doing certain things. But with your comment, I think it's interesting if these sats become some type of in-game economy. So instead, typical mobile games, you spend, I don't know, several euros and they give you 500 diamonds or something like that. And then with those diamonds in the game, you can buy a house or speed up, the development of your units or something. But it'd be kind of interesting to see if you could just do that with actual sats with real value. But because it's so low, and maybe the winners get something back, but then you're also kind of creating monetary incentives for the players, which can then kind of skew the gameplay as well, because you'll get people who are in it just for the money if it's worth their time. So I think there's really, really interesting stuff to explore there.
Yeah, because as a gamer myself, I'm not really interested in like the civilization building. Like, I don't like the idea of paying money to speed up my gameplay. I like skill based. I want it to go like, I don't want you to have any advantage of me just because you spent more money, right? I want us to go head to head. And like you mentioned, yeah, like it would be fun for if it's between friends, like just be able to say, "Hey, I'm better than you, I'm faster than you," and we're like betting one sat. So who gives a shit? Um, but for people who actually are good at it and want to compete with other people who are really good at it, there may be a monetary incentive, and maybe up tiers too, where it's like you have skill levels, So if somebody scores within these ranges, then they compete against each other on the global tournament. People who score within lower ranges, they compete against each other or something like that. But yeah, I always like that skill based, like let's just go skill for skill. And, to make it more exciting, we can put a few sats on the line too.
Yeah, I think there are actually there are some really cool games that are created by Thunder. I think it's THNDR. They integrate a lot with like the Zebedee wallet, and I'm not sure how interlinked they are, but there are some really cool games to check out over there. I may or may not have spent like 6 hours one day trying to get myself onto the top of the Snake leaderboard. I was actually on a flight and just paid for some Wi-Fi and just honestly just smashed out that game for like 6 hours. It was super addictive. And then you got put into some pool where you win like a bunch of tickets, and then you can win sort of sat prizes. I do have an idea for a quick bounty if anyone is interested. I don't know if someone has ever gone onto like Chrome and then they've lost their internet connection, and then you see this like little sort of pixelated dinosaur. It's kind of a cool Easter egg, but if you press the space button, then you can go on this journey with the dinosaur, and you can like hop over cactuses or over and under like these pterodactyls that fly through and stuff. Like, it'd be really cool if maybe there was a way where someone could accumulate points by playing a game like that, and then at the end of it, I don't know, maybe it creates some sort of like LN URL withdraw invoice from some sort of like faucet which is filled with sats. I would love to see something like that, something which can like occupy someone's spare time. But yeah, gaming's a really cool one. We'd love to see more of that.
Yeah, my only thing is like, what's the incentive for whoever's filling up the faucet, right? Like, are you going to run ads, try to make that money back? To me, it seems like if you just go peer to peer, person to person, and the players are the ones that are filling up the faucet, and the ones that are filling up the reward, then it's kind of like it fulfills itself. There's no need to be like, okay, well, as a company or somebody who's filling up this faucet now, how do I make my money back? And then probably going to do ads, and then I want to see a world with no more fucking ads, man. Excuse the language. Let me know if I can't curse up here.
I think you're speaking for a lot of people here, including myself. Yeah, I do hope that micropayments here can replace ads. I mean, it's unbelievable. Any device, any browser, anything you install, you first have to figure out how you can block ads. But yeah, this is a good conversation, but we are over the hour now. So maybe we should just continue this in the Bitcoin Design Slack, which you can find on bitcoin.design. And we have another community call in 3 weeks. And if there's tons of interest in gaming, we can also set up other calls, or we can set up a gaming channel in Slack, and we can just continue things there. And also John's, where's the best place to sign up for the Bolt Fun hackathon? If you want to give a pointer to that, the last one before we wrap up.
Sure, yeah. You could go to bolt.fun and click on the hackathon link in the top bar, and you will see all the details to join in. You could also join in on the Bitcoin Design Slack. There's a Bolt Fun channel. Those two places. And you can always reach out to me on Twitter or Ed on Twitter or the Bitcoin Design Slack, and we'd be happy to help. And Christoph, I do have a request. Ed wrote a little jingle yesterday, so I was wondering if we could get him to close us out with this one, and I'm putting Ed on the spot.
Okay, go ahead.
Oh man!
If you want to, Ed, no problem.
I never should have. I never should have written this jingle. Oh, God, I'm gonna need to remember that.
You don't have to. It's fine.
No, it's cool. It's cool. It goes something like, "My money don't jiggle jiggle. It routes through a lightning payment channel to you. Makes me want to hodl hodl, for sure. Fiat is real slow. Lightning is the real shit." I can't remember the last lyric, but it was something like that. You can find it on our Twitter page. I can't believe you actually just made me do that, Johns. But
okay, you can return the favor and make Johns do like a TikTok video on that one.
Yeah, I'll save that IOU for another.
Fun is mandatory, right?
Yeah. Okay, cool. Well, thank you. Thanks everyone for listening. Thanks for the good conversation. I am excited to see more Lightning stuff happening. And I'll see you on the rest of Twitter. Thanks all for joining.
Take care, everybody. Thank you so
Christoph.
much.